personalized Genesis sequence.
Hi and welcome. My name is Marit van Dijk and I'll talk to you today about will AI Assistant make developers redundant? Because as you may have noticed, AI is everywhere. It's at conferences. These aren't even all the talks on the program about AI. And there's another talk on AI in a different room right this minute. So thanks for joining my talk. AI is part of all of these products. Even Google, when I was writing this talk originally in May, they introduced the Google AI overview, which was super fun because I could have had a whole slide deck with examples of what went wrong there. Because they decided to train the AI overview on the internet, including The Onion and Reddit. So the results were slightly less reliable, let's say. But honestly, who could have known what might go wrong if you train your chatbots on the internet, right? Also, a lot of content that is on the internet these days is AI generated. So I don't know if anyone saw this one with the baby peacock. Most of these baby peacocks are AI generated and incorrect. So we can't even trust our search engines anymore. And I like this tweet as well. Why should we read AI generated content if someone didn't even take the time to write it? But we also hear a lot of bold claims about AI. One being, it will make us more productive. And it will take our jobs. Another favorite is AGI is imminent. Which I really hope not, because I grew up on Terminator movies. So, but let's look at, will it take our jobs? There's a brilliant blog post by Holly Cummins where she explains that jobs have disappeared before in the past due to technological advances or simply changes. One of the examples she mentions was the knocker-up, or a person who would walk by all the houses, knock on their windows when it was time to wake up and go to work. This was before the alarm clock was invented. Alarm clocks are what we used before we had our little pocket computer, also known as a phone, even though we don't use it to call anyone, that we set our alarm on now. So the claim that tech will take our jobs is not new. We've had most recently low-code and no-code solutions that are heralded as now we no longer need programmers because business can just click it together. Of course, people have to also build these low-code and no-code platforms and maintain them. Before that, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, we had case tools and 4GL. I was a teaching assistant when I was in university. One of the tools was rational rows. I remember TAing a class on UML, and rational rows could be used to write your UML diagram and then generate the code from it. I was also the TA for a bunch of AI students who would write the code and then generate the UML diagrams from it, because that was what the class was about. So that was interesting. And even before that, we had COBOL, which was intended to be a language where business people could write programs. And we all know how that worked out. So even though it seems like it might take our jobs, also from Holly's blog post, the demand for developers is actually increasing, even now with AI coding assistants. What we do see is that jobs will change. Also, that isn't new. I've worked in IT for about 20 years or just over 20 years. During that time, I've seen jobs change. I've changed jobs. We've seen the change from waterfall to agile projects or to agile way of working, or if you're unlucky, an agile way of working. So then the question is, does it make us more productive? There are several studies. This one is by GitHub. They used a fairly standard task of writing a web server in JavaScript And they had a bunch of people. They made sure that they had people who knew JavaScript and that they were otherwise relatively the same skills and background. They randomly split them up into groups. And they found that the group that used Copilot finished the task more often, 78% over 70%, and did so faster. But of course, the task is a relatively standard task where there are lots of examples. We don't know how that generalizes to tasks that aren't standard, which a lot of custom software isn't 100% standard. They also looked at what teams spend most of their time doing. They claim it's writing code. One of the things I'm missing here is working with existing code or trying to understand existing code. Maybe that's part of writing code. I don't know. Because different studies find different numbers, and it's also how you divide how developers spend their time, how you measure that. There are other studies that say we spend only 52 minutes per day actually producing code, and we spend the rest of the day doing lots of other things. And my fellow Feline fangirl, or fanboy up front, hi Tom. In the book The Programmer's Brain by Feline Hermans, she states, and this is based on research, developers on average spend as much as 58% of their time comprehending existing source code. Feline is a literal professor of computer science education. So from her book, we spend a lot of time trying to understand existing source code. If you're interested in reading code, I have a talk on that tomorrow. So, shameless plug. And also, CodeScene have done research, and they claim about 80% of your time you're doing maintenance on existing code. And they say the majority of a developer's time isn't spent writing code, but understanding and maintaining existing code. JetBrains have also done their own research, and they found that developers can save up to 8 hours working with JetBrains AI Assistant. We've seen that people have saved time, although how much time varies. A lot of people saved a little time, a few people saved a lot of time, and that might depend on the types of tasks or how you leverage the tool. We did see a productivity boost, so we spent less time searching for information because we can ask in our IDE, which helps us complete tasks faster. And because we can automate some of the boring stuff, we can spend more time on challenging and enjoyable work. The top features are AI chat, refactoring suggestions, finding problems in the code, explaining the code, and generating documentation. My personal observation is that this does not include the writing of the code, and that aligns with my own personal experience. I prefer to use the features that help me understand existing code and explain the code to me. There was a developer experience boost. It reduces the cognitive load, although it remains to be seen how that impacts our learning, because there's also research that says, like, if we suffer, quote unquote, while we're learning, if we struggle with the material, we retain it better. We do experience improved focus because we can stay in the flow, and we see flow state gains. That ties in with how we are building our JetBrains AI Assistant. So our approach to building it into our products is weaving it into the user workflow and having it understand your code and the context. I've tried to create a diagram of where you can use AI Assistant in IntelliJ IDEA. If you're using a different JetBrains IDE, you'll have the same features or similar features. Not all features are delivered at the same time, but since you're mostly Java developers? Yes. Using IntelliJ IDEA? Thank you. I'm going to try to demo some of this, but live coding is scary. Live coding using AI, which is non-deterministic, is scarier, and doing that on a conference Wi-Fi is terrifying. So let's see how that goes. So we can use the chat to ask questions For example, how do I do quicksort? Yay. So we can ask generic programming questions. It can provide us code that we can use. We can copy the code, insert the code, or create a new file. We can continue the conversation. So for example, if we want to have it in Kotlin, we can ask, can we have it in Kotlin, please? Or we can edit the prompt here and say, how do I do a quicksort in Kotlin? If I can spell. I won't run that because then we have to wait for the answer. We can also, because it's integrated into our IDE, we can ask questions about our project. I prepared some custom prompts. So for example, we can ask, where is the SQL to select owner details? And it's going to look for matches, and it finds the SQL in our project. So obviously, we can use our IDE to search for stuff, but if you're not exactly sure of the exact thing that we're looking for, we can now ask AI Assistant. It doesn't yet link from the response to where that file is, so we would have to open that file ourselves. And here we can also, for example, ask it to explain code to us where it will start a new chat to explain what this code is about. If we have specific types, snippets of code like SQL, there are specific prompts defined to explain SQL or explain regex or explain a cron fragment, if you have those in your code. We can also ask about version control. So, for example, we can ask what was the last commit, and it will go dive into our version control and look for that information. Yes, I did a commit today. Or we can go in the commit history and ask to, for example, explain a commit. We can select one or multiple commits and ask to explain them. So all of these different ways we can familiarize ourselves with the code, and AI Assistant can summarize that for us. We can also use mentions and commands. So, for example, we can ask explain, go away. To explain a particular file, like pet validator, so we can ask what happens in this file. You may have noticed that there are several predefined prompts as well, so we can ask about this file or local changes, or we can tag files and symbols in our code base. If we then want to see the actual file, to have a look at the code, see if the summary matches our understanding of the code, we can do that too. Obviously, we can use it to generate code. We can do that from the menu and say generate code, but as you can see, there's also a shortcut to do so. I prefer to use shortcuts so I don't need to use my mouse. You're again in the way, presentation assistant. So let's say make sure pet is not older than 30 years. And that will generate the code for us. If we want to, we can add a follow-up message. For example, extract the age to a constant. We can also accept it. We see that currently it doesn't add the import, so there might be some small things that you need to fix, but Alt-Enter is your friend, so we can use quick fixes to fix the small details. Like I said, we can also ask it to review local changes. If we've made changes, so this is helpful if you're working on some stuff, you get interrupted by meetings, and you want to quickly figure out what was I doing, ask it to review your local changes, or if you want to ask anything more specific, you can do that too. So now that we've made some changes, let's commit those changes. We can use AI Assistant to generate a commit message. It will generate quite, in my opinion, quite a lengthy commit message, but it describes what happens. If we want to use a particular style for this commit message generation, we can edit the prompt that is used for this commit message. For example, we can say use max 10 words, or we can, I don't know if you want to use conventional commits, or you want to say include a ticket number starting with these letters. And then, of course, you can still edit the commit message in the commit message window, or if you want to add why you made those changes or whatever you need to change, but it can save you some time. So then we can commit those, which I won't do because this is a demo. We can also use it to find problems. Let me find a file where I added some problematic code. So I deliberately added some code to the pet clinic that is bad, that has problems. Don't do this at home. Don't try this in production. So if we open the AI actions again, we can ask AI Assistant to find the problems in this code. Obviously, if you have some code where I think there's a bug here, or I'm not exactly sure whether this works, you can ask it to find problems. Let me see. So by design, there's a risk of infinite loop here. Lots of other stuff that is wrong. If you have problems in your code, it's giving us a list now. We can continue the chat and ask about these specific problems and see how we can fix them. We can do the same from the commit window. So we can also find errors in a specific commit, which could be useful if, for example, you release some code to production and now stuff is buggy, you want to figure out what's wrong. Or even before you push your code and create your code review, see if there are any problems in your commit, excuse me. Finally, if we start the application, the lovely Spring people were kind enough to add an error endpoint. So if we go to localhost, once the application is started, there we go. Then we have our puppy and kitten tags, and we can trigger the error endpoint. Because if your application is throwing a runtime error, not all error messages are equally helpful. Some are quite obscure. We can ask AI Assistant to explain what is wrong. In this case, of course, the error is there by default or on purpose for demo purposes, which usually it finds. I can't find it right now, but often it will say in the response, this is by design, but if you want to fix it, here's how, because the default prompt asks for what is wrong and how can we fix it. So then let me go to a different example. Let's say we have some code about photography, and we want to first understand what this code is about. I deliberately didn't use any names in the code that are about photography. So if we ask what this method is about, then it will tell us that there are some kind of calculations going on. But it doesn't necessarily know what domain is this. So it will give me several options of what might be math heavy. If we, however, provide it with some hints, so we can, for example, rename this function to exposure, and then ask it to explain again, now it understands that this code is about photography. Coincidentally, that's why this class is called main and not photography. Otherwise, it figures it out right away, and my demo is ruined. So now it understands that this code is about photography. Next, let's ask because the naming in this code is quite obscure. So we can ask, can you refactor this code to explain concepts of photo. We can ask it to explain the concepts of photography and refactor this code for us. We see a lot of documentation is generated. We see more meaningful variable names like brightness level or exposure. And we could insert this code at the caret. Alternatively, we can ask, wait, let me select all the code. We can ask to suggest a refactoring. So then it will also refactor the code, but it will do so according to the default prompt. But if we ask for a refactoring, we now have the option to show the diff. So we can actually see the diff between our original code and the code that was suggested, and if we want to accept all of these changes. So now we have better variables, etc. But we see that this refactoring also includes renaming, but it's only done in this file. So if you want to do a refactoring and you don't want to change the names because you don't want to change where they are used throughout the code base, then smile at our friend here. Then you can ask in the prompt to please not change any of the names, and you can use the refactor rename to change the variables and apply the renaming throughout your code base. So next, let's ask for test cases. So again, we can ask an AI and specify what we want. So we can ask for real-world test cases for this method. And because it understands, or, well, it doesn't understand anything, it's a machine, or a bunch of machines possibly, because it because it has the information that it's about photography, it suggests test cases that are usually it would suggest us, can you, was there a typo? Damn it. Can it suggest real for this method? Yes, there you go, thanks. That would mess my prompt engineering. Real world test case, and let's just give it an extra hint about photography. Go. And then it will talk about, you know, what if there's a sunny day? What if it's night? So it will suggest all of these real-world test cases. So using something like real-world when generating test cases, prompt engineering is a thing. So finding the right words to prompt can help. So it already created some tests. We can alternatively also use the AI predefined action to generate unit tests, which will generate them in a new file, because the example that we got here is pseudocode, so we can't really create the entire file. So I'm going to do that the other way. Now we have some tests that are being generated. I definitely love the names of test case 1 and test case 2, not really. So I might, after it's done generating, specify, give them meaningful names. Please give your tests meaningful names so that if they fail, you know what the intended behavior was and you don't spend a lot of time analyzing them. But for now, instead of regenerating, which will take some time, let's just accept these tests so that we can run them. We see that we, again, have a few problems that we can fix. So we want to add JUnit. I didn't have that in my demo project yet. And then we can run the tests. Now remember that we are working with a large language model, not a large math model, and our tests are quite math heavy. So we see that not all of our test cases actually work. We have the real-world scenarios, but the numbers it generated aren't correct. That's actually kind of expected. So if you have math-heavy stuff, you want to find your own test data that is correct and calculates the right things. Finally, who loves resolving merge conflicts? Oh, some of us. I'm not the only one. A little bit. Okay, so let me see. If I created a merge conflict by design, if I merge this branch, no, merge, I get a merge conflict. So obviously, IntelliJ IDEA has tools to help resolve this merge conflict, so we can apply non-conflicting changes. We can use the magic wand to resolve simple conflicts. But now we can also use AI Assistant to resolve these merge conflicts for us, which is even faster. So that's pretty useful, in my opinion. Then we have the new terminal. Is anyone using the new terminal yet? It's currently in beta. A few tentative hands, thank you. So please please try it out and give us your feedback. One of the things that I like is that I can now use AI Assistant in my terminal. So I can either click this icon or I can use the same shortcut that I can use to generate code and ask AI Assistant to generate a command like revert to the commit before the last merge. And it will generate the command for me to go to head caret, which is the last one before the merge, and we can actually run that command. So now we are back at where we were before we merged in the feature branch. We can ask it for all kinds of commands. For example, what process... Oh, wait, let me first say that I want to use AI Assistant. What process is running on port 8080? I don't think I closed the pet clinic, so it should still be running. This happens to me every so often. Is I start an application on a port, I start working on something else, I have to start an application on a port, but something is still running and I forgot what. So now, but I don't need this command often enough to actually remember the exact command. So now I don't have to, and I can ask, how do I stop this process? And it will generate that for me. It already included the PID command, so I don't even have to copy-paste it. And if we go back to the pet clinic, that is now stopped. So very useful, but obviously don't run commands on the command line if you don't understand what commands they are, because that's how you get in trouble. Finally, we have integrated AI Assistant also in the console. So we can now ask AI Assistant to generate queries for us. For example, show me all pets per owner. Now I need to write a join. I don't do that often enough. So it will give me a join. Let me accept that and see whether it actually runs. Okay, so occasionally it doesn't give me the right names. So there is no such thing, client name. You know what? Just give me everything. Okay. Why is this not working? I didn't properly prepare this. Okay, try again. Show me all info for all pets per owner. Okay, still it's getting the field names wrong, but fortunately we have database integration, so we can fix that at least. And now we get all of the results for all of the pets per owners. So we looked at lots of ways that we can use AI Assistant in the IDE. I have lots of slides to back that up, just in case the Wi-Fi didn't work. I'm going to quickly skip through them. So all in all, I think that AI Assistant can save us time. It can save us boilerplate code, and it can save us from typing. It can do tasks that we don't like to do, like generating tests. Not enough of us are writing tests. It can generate documentation for us, and especially what I like is it can help us understand existing code. Of course, I had some contrived examples. What about using this in a real-world use case? My colleague Tagir Valiv did so when writing a new inspection for IntelliJ IDEA using AI Assistant, and he wrote a blog post about it. And he said he definitely saved some time. He saved 10 or 20 minutes on a task that took him 35 minutes, so that's percentage-wise quite a lot. And that included creating a U-track issue and taking screenshots for the blog post. So not too bad, he says. The main problem that he has is that the AI cannot learn. So whenever he had to correct it or tell it to go slightly more this way or that, it wouldn't apply that the next time. Whereas, of course, if you have a junior developer that you give feedback on, please use this instead of that, hopefully they will do that the next time. So when it's, as they get better, he believes they will become more useful. My other colleague, Khalid, wrote a blog post about critical thinking in an AI-powered world, to discuss the strengths and weaknesses of LLMs. So obviously, as we've seen, they're good at summarizing things, they're good at generating text and code, and at classifying things, but they're not so good at math, randomness, timeliness, and they are non-deterministic, which makes it fun for those of us who have to demo this stuff. Fun. So computers are good at math, LLMs are good at language. In terms of timeliness, the models that we use have a cutoff date, so they are not always up to date with the very latest information. So any suggestions that you might get might be outdated because the data they were trained on is outdated. So be especially mindful of that if you're trying to use the latest tech. But let's be honest, who's on Java 23? Overachiever, I see you, Johan. Who's on Java 17? Nice. Who's on Java 11? Java 8? Okay, so we actually were ahead because in our last developer eco survey, about 50% of the respondents were still on Java 8, so good job, everyone. But anyway, so be mindful that if you're on the newer versions, the models will not be trained on that yet, or not always. Another objection that we hear is the code secure? We're very honest, we don't check for that. So that means that you have to, same as you would for the code that you and your teammates write, because that might not be secure either. So be critical in evaluating the suggestions and use additional tools and techniques to verify that. Now might also be a good time to become a pen tester, I don't know. We have seen research that the code quality can go down when using AI assistants. There's higher code churn, meaning that code that was committed is also... Alina is eating while I'm working. And so the code churn, code that gets committed is also more quickly reverted when it's AI-generated code, and it can generate code with more code smells. Obviously, if we know that it's trained on all of the code that is out there, we might have an idea of the quality of all of the code that is out there, lots of training projects, etc. We should also be aware of a thing called automation bias, which is our tendency to favor suggestions from an automated decision-making system and ignore contradictory information, even if that contradictory information is correct. So always be critical of what your AI assistant suggests to you. Obviously, we also are aware of the problem of hallucinations. So that's when it makes stuff up. My colleagues on the Kotlin team, for example, complained about it making up Kotlin standard library methods. We now have our own Kotlin model. Hopefully that got better. Like everyone, we are working on preventing hallucinations and are working on some tools to make that better. Another objection that people have is we can't send our data to the cloud. Some of you might not be allowed to use coding assistants that send data to the cloud or send your code to the cloud. And in a way, that ship has kind of sailed because we also put all of our code on GitHub. We use Slack to discuss our customers. We write our business plans in Google Docs. So now that it's our code, all of a sudden we are extremely worried about it, even though we maybe should have been asking these questions earlier. But it's a valid concern to have, which is why we're also working on JetBrains AI Enterprise, which will make it so that you can run JetBrains AI service on premises, and you can also connect to, for example, models that you have vetted and approved over other models. So we currently have OpenAI and Gemini. So if you're an enterprise customer and you have approved one of them and not the other, you can send all of your prompts to one and not the other. And we will work on installation of LLM models on-prem as well. And as you might know, we have a feature that we call full-line code completion or local completion, which is part of your regular subscription, which uses a model that runs on your local machine. And this is not part of AI Assistant, the additional product, but it's part of your regular product. But the feature set is, of course, limited. So all in all, does this make us more productive? And we've seen that jobs will change. Someone said the hottest new programming is English. That may or may not be true. It's anyway less deterministic, and language can be vague, so results may vary. I did appreciate my colleague Jakub, who has his birthday today, who said that English is now a Gradle language, and you can use it to import your Gradle stuff. We're working on the new AEP to have inline code completion, so you don't even have to use the shortcut to get the little prompt box. You can just write English, and it will do these things for you. But to reiterate, make sure that you understand the code that AI Assistant gives you, much like if you're copy-pasting from Stack Overflow, make sure that you understand what you're copy-pasting, because once you commit that, you own that. Does it replace developers? It could produce more code faster. However, that means that there's more code to maintain, and we've already seen that we spend about 80% of our time maintaining existing code. I really appreciate Kevlin's take on that, which says that, you know, as we start generating a lot of AI code, that means that now we are maintaining, debugging, and fixing code that we didn't write. And who loves debugging code that you didn't write? Just only the two of us, the rest of you not so much. So do you want to generate all the code with AI? Obviously, scanning tools that can prevent errors, find security issues, whatever, are good, and good development practices are more important than ever. And our skill set will change, and we need to adapt, much like we have for the past however long you've been working in IT. So TLDR, I don't think they'll replace us, or at least not yet. And with 22 seconds to spare, if you would like to see the slides, you can find them on my website. If you have any questions or comments or feedback, please rate my talk. I'm out of time and have to make way for the new speaker. But you can find me around the conference until Friday, and you can find my colleagues at the booth. Thank you.